The moment someone says, "I'll come over," your body reacts before your mind does. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it's there. A tightening in your chest, a quiet drop in your stomach. You nod, you agree, you sound normal, but something inside you pulls backward, like a door closing halfway on its own. Because what they're asking for isn't just a visit. They were asking to step into the only place where you don't have to manage yourself. And your nervous system knows that instantly. Your home isn't just where you live. It's where your mind finally stops scanning. It's where your face relaxes without permission. It's where you don't have to anticipate reactions, adjust tone, or stay slightly alert. And the thought of someone entering that space feels less like company and more like interruption. Not loud, not dramatic, just invasive in a way you can't fully explain. You don't hate people. That's the part everyone gets wrong. In fact, you're often good with them. You can listen, you can engage, you can be present. But presence costs you something. And home is where that cost is supposed to drop to zero. When someone is inside your space, even someone you like, your system doesn't fully rest. It stays partially awake. You start noticing sounds again, movement, the way the room feels different with another body in it. You don't feel unsafe. You feel exposed, like the version of you that only exists in private has been interrupted mid-breath. And once that happens, your mind starts tracking time without asking, how long will they stay? When will the house feel like mine again? You don't think these thoughts clearly. They run underneath everything else, quiet but constant. What most people never realize is that for you, home is not social territory. It's regulatory territory. It's where your nervous system recalibrates itself after being in the world. Out there, you're always slightly on, slightly aware, slightly performing, even on good days, especially on good days. At home, that background noise finally shuts off. So when someone enters, the noise comes back online. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because your system wasn't built to rest while being observed. And that observation doesn't have to be critical to feel heavy. Just existing in the same space is enough to change how your body behaves. This is why the relief you feel when the door finally closes is so intense and so private. You don't announce it. You don't celebrate it. But your shoulders drop. Your breathing changes. The house feels bigger again, quieter, like it's returned to its original shape. That relief isn't rejection of the person. It's the end of vigilance. And people who experience this often feel guilt about it because they assume it means something negative about them. It doesn't. It means your sense of comfort is deeply tied to environmental control. When you choose stimulation, you can handle a lot. When it arrives uninvited into your safe space, your system resists, even if your words don't. There's another layer most people miss. When someone is in your home, you're not just sharing space. You're sharing identity. The objects around you, the silence, the way you move when no one is watching, all of it belongs to a version of you that isn't meant for display. So even casual guests create a low-level identity threat. You're suddenly aware of how you exist, of how you might be perceived. And that awareness is the opposite of rest. This is why you'd rather meet people anywhere else. Not because you dislike closeness, but because neutral spaces protect the boundary between who you are publicly and who you are privately. Your home is where that boundary disappears, and letting someone cross it feels like giving up the last place where you don't have to explain yourself. And here's the quiet truth. People like you often protect their inner world more fiercely than they protect relationships. Not because relationships don't matter, but because without that inner world intact, nothing else works. You know what it costs to rebuild yourself after too much exposure. You felt that depletion before. So you guard the one place that restores you, even if you can't fully explain why. And once you understand that, you stop asking why the idea of guests feels heavy. You start realizing it's not about them at all. It's about what happens to you when your sanctuary stops being yours. Most people assume this reaction is about preference, but for you it's about memory. Not the kind you can recall clearly, but the kind your body stored without asking. Somewhere earlier in life, your system learned that other people inside your space meant adjustment. It meant being quieter, or more polite, or more aware of how things looked. It meant that comfort had to wait until everyone left. So even now, when nothing bad is happening, your body prepares the same way. You clean more than necessary. You notice details you normally ignore. You become slightly tense without knowing why. This isn't anxiety in the obvious sense. It's conditioning. Your nervous system doesn't trust shared space, even when your mind does. That's why hosting feels heavier than leaving the house. When you go out, you expect to perform. You choose the environment. You know when you can leave. But when someone is inside your home, escape disappears. You can't fully withdraw without seeming rude. You can't fully relax without feeling watched. So you exist in a middle state, present but guarded, waiting for your system to be allowed to shut down again. And over time, your mind learns something simple. Avoid the situation, not because it's painful, but because it costs too much afterward. The recovery time is long. The silence you need feels earned. And the idea of repeating that cycle becomes exhausting before it even starts. There's also something else happening that few people talk about. When someone enters your home, they don't just enter a space. They interrupt a rhythm, the way you move, the way you think, the way time passes when no one is observing you. That rhythm is fragile. It took years to build, and people who rely on it often feel slightly disoriented when it's broken. You might feel irritable afterward, or foggy, or like you can't quite settle back in. That's not moodiness. That's your system recalibrating after being forced into alertness where it expected rest. This is where people misunderstand you the most. They think you're closed off, but you're not. You just open slowly and selectively. You don't give access to the parts of yourself that keep you stable unless you feel deeply safe. And safety for you isn't about trust alone. It's about whether you can remain yourself while someone else is present. Most people don't notice when they adapt. You do. You feel every small shift, every compromise. And those small shifts add up faster than you expect. But here's the uncomfortable part you may not like hearing. If you never allow anyone into your inner space, you never test whether it can hold connection without collapsing. Protection can quietly turn into isolation when it goes unquestioned. Not because you're wrong, but because the rule becomes automatic. No one in, no exceptions. And over time, that can create a loneliness that doesn't feel like loneliness. It feels like calm, until it doesn't. Until you realize the silence you protect is also the silence where no one fully knows you. The question isn't whether you should change. It's whether you're choosing this, or whether your nervous system is choosing for you. There's a difference between honoring your boundaries and letting old patterns decide your present. Some people truly don't need others in their space to feel connected. And some do, but learned early that connection came with a cost they couldn't afford. Only you know which one you are, but noticing it changes everything. Because once you see that this isn't about guests, or homes, or hosting, you stop judging yourself for it. You start understanding the intelligence behind the behavior. Your home feels sacred because it is. It's where you return to yourself. But the real question is whether it has to stay untouched to remain safe, or whether one day, with the right person, it could still be yours, even with someone else inside it. That thought might make you uneasy. That's okay. People who value inner peace usually grow in quiet, uncomfortable realizations, not loud decisions. And if this made you pause longer than you expected, that tells you something important about how carefully you protect what matters most.